What is up, guys? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I am back with another D&D 101 video. This video is all about calculating your armor class. I received a request on my previous D&D 101, submit your questions to me video, and the question was, can a dragon sorcerer cast mage armor on themselves? Yes, you can, but the answer is probably not what you think. Or maybe it is if you're more familiar with the rule sets. Basically, they cannot stack. You can choose which one you'd like to use, and Mage Armor and Draconic Sorcerer Bloodline both provide the exact same benefit of 13 plus your Dex mod, so it's really just a choice. If you're a Dragon Sorcerer, you're a Sorcerer, so I probably wouldn't spend a spell slot on Mage Armor if you have the exact same equivalent naturally, non-magically built into yourself. So, basically, I can go through the player's handbook and show you the couple of snippets where things are located, but I thought I would draw your guys' attention, if you're unfamiliar, to a thing here called Sage Advice. So if you go to dnd.com or dnd.wizards.com and go over here to this Articles tab, you can see all the different things. And if you go to All Articles and Sage Advice, this will take you to a list for 5th edition. It's not that long. It goes back a little ways. But basically, they are releasing about every other month or so a new article detailing answers to your questions about commonly asked rules-based questions. So I'm going to click the November errata for instance, the Apocalypse and Elemental Evil Player's Companion, because it has a link to this, the Sage Advice Compendium, which I do happen to have open right here. This is currently an 18-page document that, more often than not, I'd say, if you have questions and can't find a direct answer, I would check here first, because a lot of the most common questions you'll ask or will be asked as a DM or as a fellow player are going to be answered right here. You can also see this kind of beige-ish text here, box. If something is outlined in that, that means that it is new and has been added recently. And you can see this does PHB, Monster Manual, and basically it tells you what it goes over. So, and how to you can use these rules, you don't have to, official rulings. These aren't technically, they're as official as you're going to get as a ruling on certain aspects. Jeremy Crawford is one of the lead rules designers for the game. He's the one who responds to these. So basically what I'm going to do is, rather than explain to you what I was saying about armor and armor class, I'm just going to type in armor here in the search bar, and voila, how to calculate a player's armor class, or AC. It is currently spelled out right here in this sort of 3/4 of a page little section here, and it pretty much does the whole job. I'd say if you read through this from top to bottom, this one little section, it should probably answer all of your questions. I will, however, break it down for you and kind of give you a quick and dirty version of this. So essentially, armor class adjustments, calculations, if you will, are mutually exclusive. In our example of the Mage Armor Draconic Sorcerer, you have the way to calculate your AC, 13 plus your Dexterity modifier, whether it's Draconic Sorcerer Bloodline or the Mage Armor spell. Those are both armor calculations. So when you get into a situation where you have things that calculate your armor, you choose whichever one you want to use. More often than not, I'd say you probably choose the higher one, because higher AC is better. And that's basically how to determine that. If X gives me a calculation to my armor and Y does too, they don't stack, you just pick which one. The exception to this rule are things that I will call untyped bonuses, which is an old legacy from a previous edition, but basically things that just add a number to your armor class. Like a shield adds a +2 to your armor class. That happens after the armor class calculation is taken into effect. And we'll go over some examples here in the article. So basically tells you where you can find it, and lists here more or less at the time, and almost to the point of currently, the only ways to calculate your armor. You have Unarmored. This is the base for everybody, is 10 plus their Dexterity modifier. Your Dexterity modifier will usually be somewhere in the -1 to +5 range. That's an 8 to a 20 as far as the actual ability score goes. So if you did have an 8 Dexterity, that's a -1 modifier. That's a 10 -1, so your AC is 9. If you had a 20 Dexterity, that is a +5, so 10 plus 5 is 15. This can be further altered by switching things up by saying being wearing armor. So if we jump over here to the armor table in the player's handbook, you can see that there are certain calculations here. Light armor, medium armor, heavy armor. Light armor, as you can see, either padded or leather, is 11 plus your dexterity mod. Again, in those previous examples, if we used the dexterity modifier of 20, that's a 5. So rather than being 10 plus 5, it is 11 plus 5 in that scenario, or 12 plus 5. Then if we jump into the medium armors, the numbers are relative. We're going upwards here. 12, 13, 14, or 15. The difference being here is, and this is explained in the armor section, that the maximum dexterity modifier is 2. So even though we just discussed that, if you had a dexterity of 20, it's a plus 5 modifier. So basically, if you were wearing studded leather armor, which is a 12 plus your dex mod, and say you did have a plus 5 to your modifier, you'd have 17 AC in studded leather armor. If you were to still be that 20 dexterity character and wear half plate, which is 15 plus your dexterity modifier, when it says max of 2, that means that number caps at 2. So even though you had 20 dexterity, if you're wearing half plate, your AC is still a 17, which is exactly as it would have been wearing studded leather armor. So that's a decision that you have to make when you're building characters and playing through the game. Do I want to potentially have a higher dexterity and wear medium armor and lose out on that extra point or points? Or do I want to wear light armor and potentially have a lower AC overall? The only way to change that currently is the feat medium armor mastery. That will let you use increase the maximum benefit here, which is currently a 2, to a 3. So in that scenario from before, if you'd had that feat and a 20 dexterity, this number would be 18, whereas here it would still only be 17. Then we move on to heavy weapons, and this tosses dexterity out the window entirely. It just sets it at a regular number. 14 for ring mail, 16 for chain mail, 17 for splint mail, and 18 for plate mail. The higher ones here do require strength to wear them efficiently, so you will suffer negatives if you do not have the 13 strength for chainmail or the 15 for splint or plate mail. But again, that number is solid. It replaces the armor calculation with a solid number. Then we have a couple other options. There's an Unarmored Defense feat or character class trait that is one for the barbarian and one for the monk. They are very similar. They take the existing formula of 10 plus your dexterity and they add, or dexterity modifier, and they add an additional modifier. For barbarians, it's constitution. For monks, it's wisdom. So again, if you were a barbarian monk, you wouldn't get 10 plus your dexterity mod, plus your constitution mod, plus your wisdom mod. That's not how that works. You would choose 10 plus dex plus con, or 10 plus dex plus wisdom. It would be your choice, as those two calculations that I mentioned at the beginning are separate calculations and mutually exclusive. You could choose one or the other. If you want to throw armor into this mix, then for one, Unarmored Defense for a monk doesn't work with armor. For either of them, it doesn't work with armor. It's Unarmored Defense. But let's say you threw on, scale mail on top of this. You couldn't activate your Unarmored Defense or use that feature for barbarian or monk, but you would still get the benefits of the armor. So things don't stack in that way. As we mentioned, the Draconic Sorcerer gets the 13 plus dexterity modifier. We also mentioned Mage Armor does a similar thing. And then Natural Armor is 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your natural armor bonus. This doesn't really come into play too much for characters. This comes into effect more for monsters and NPCs, and it actually states that there. It's potentially relevant to a druid or character that can assume another form, but druids typically take on the strength, dex, and con of the creature they shape change into, so I feel like it's less important. We mentioned Mage Armor as well. The only other thing to mention that's separate from this that came out after this is the Turtle. The Turtle, which is a class or a race available, it's an anthropomorphic turtle that was available in a document called the Turtle Package that came out around the time of Tomb of Annihilation. One of their natural traits is they have an AC of 17. This is natural armor, and their bodies are designed in such a way that they cannot wear armor. So their armor is at 17, and that never changes, unless they choose to add things on, which we'll discuss in a second. So even if a turtle was a turtle barbarian, and had 10 plus dex plus con mod, if that's not higher than the 17 of your innate turtle armor, it would make more sense to not opt to use the barbarian feature and just use your natural turtle armor, as it will be better. which is part of the reason that makes Turtles somewhat a desired class in certain scenarios, because it lets you avoid the trying to figure out how to do armor and a little bit about what your stats are, because it kind of takes dexterity out of the picture, because that is just a set number similar to heavy armor of 17. It is not influenced by your dexterity in any fashion, and armor cannot be worn to append that. So, as we scroll through here we go. These message, along with anything else that gives you a formula, as I stated, for calculating AC, is mutually exclusive. You can only benefit from one at a time. So, similarly, a druid barbarian who transforms into a beast form that has natural armor can use either the beast's natural armor or unarmored defense. You aren't considered to be wearing armor when you use natural armor. So, that's an option that you have if you choose to shape change in multi-class. So, then we get into what I was calling untyped bonuses. This is something, as we see right here, like a shield. So a shield doesn't come up with a calculation for your AC, it just adds a static number. For instance, a shield is a +2. So in any of those scenarios we discussed before, with the heavy armor, medium armor, light armor, whatever that number is that you came up with, whatever it is, plus your dexterity mod, whether it's with armor, whether it's unarmored, whether it's mage armor, or so on, or natural armor, you add a shield as a +2 bonus. So calculate your AC first, then add the shield bonus on. So whatever that number is at first, then you add 2. In the Turtle example of a 17 AC, giving a Turtle a shield bumps their AC from a 17 to a 19. There are a couple other things that can adjust this. They do mention here cover. Half cover gives you a +2 bonus to AC. 3/4 cover gives you a +5. So these can stack. So you can benefit from a shield and also benefit from cover. So whatever we'll use the Turtle again. 17 AC plus 2 from a shield puts you at 19. 21 if you're in half cover, or 24 if you're in 3/4 cover, and those numbers add up. Similarly, the Shield of Faith spell is a bonus action spell that I think clerics and paladins have access to. That adds a +2 to your AC. Again, adds +2 to your AC, does not form an armor calculation. Other examples of things are magic armor and magic weapons, like +1 chainmail goes from adding the base number here of 16 up to 17. Other options are things like rings, cloaks of protection. Those do add +1 to your AC, so you could wear a ring and a cloak of protection and effectively get a +2 more to your AC. And they also mention here bracers of defense are another option, but they basically take the place of a shield for characters that cannot wear armor or choose not to wear armor or wield a shield. For instance, bracers of defense are a great item for a monk. They can't use shields base, and they're pretty much always going to be fighting either one-handed with punching or maybe using a quarterstaff. So this will give them the opportunity to increase their armor class while still maintaining both hands free. Similarly, for a barbarian, you do have proficiency in medium armor and shields. If you choose to not go the armored route and not do a single-handed weapon and a shield, as a barbarian, you could basically put on bracers of defense, essentially getting the benefit of a shield while wielding a two-handed weapon. You know what? The only other thing I didn't mention is the shield spell. The shield spell flat out adds a +5 to your armor class. That is when you know you were hit via an attack. This adds a +5 to your AC to potentially turn that hit into a miss. So I think that pretty much covers what I'm thinking just off the top of my head. Most general things that deal with calculating armor class. TLDR version of this is if it's a calculation or a formula, you choose one or the other, you never get multiples. That happens first, and then singular bonuses to AC happen after the fact, like +2 from a shield or cover or so on. Anyway, guys, I hope that explains how to calculate your armor class in a means and in a format that works for you guys. So what I will do is I will put a link in the description to where you can go to the Wizards of the Coast website to find the Sage Advice Compendium. And that way you can go and check this out for yourself. There's a lot of good information here. They cover things like racial traits, using ability scores. They go over specific class-related traits, magic-related traits, as in spells and specific spells. So things that people may have come up with, or they're like, oh, what is that? That doesn't make any sense. So if you look here, you may find out how things work. Another one that comes up very often is how does extra attack work? So if I have 5 levels of Paladin and 5 levels of Fighter, does that stack together and now I have 3 attacks? No, that's not the case, but that's explained here as well. It's also explained in the player's handbook if you root around a little bit. But if you skim the player's handbook and didn't actually sit down and read most of the rules cover to cover, which is fine, you don't actually have to do that. My recommendation as a dungeon master and a fellow player is read the things that are pertinent to your character, because if you don't know and you're really adamant that that needs to be looked up, that stops gameplay and causes the DM to look something up or you to look something up, and the gameplay halts. And if the group has a really good rhythm going, that kind of kills the mood. So I would say your stuff be ready, but also take a look through the Sage Advice Compendium. You may find something that you thought was a stupid class feature or a stupid spell or something like that, and the way things are ruled on here in this may potentially change your mind and make you want to go a different route with the next character you play. I can't promise that that's the case, but I can say that it is interesting stuff and it's thought out, and it was to the point where these questions were asked so many times that Wizards of the Coast said they had to publish a PDF article answering them publicly because people had that many questions. So chances are, if you have had a question about a rule, someone else probably has had it as well, and it may be contained in this document. Anyway, guys, sorry for rambling on there at the end, but I hope you enjoyed this video, and look out for more D&D 101 videos in the near future.